I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All the Mods 10. So I have done it. Yes, the base part of the castle, the template basically, is now finished. Well, sort of. I have the courtyard for the most part sort of finished, where you walk into the center area and you can see all the pillars. Everything is just made of stone for right now, and I still have a lot of painting to do, but I did want to share this world with you. Not exactly the world, as that is going to come on episode 10, but I do want to share this base template, or at least a slice of this template. Now, if you do want access to this code, which it will be in code format, definitely join the Discord, because that's where I'm going to be sharing it, and it's going to be pinned inside of the general chat. So check the pins in there. There's also a bunch of other templates from other worlds, but this is going to be like the basic template, so you can kind of follow along if you really want to, and maybe paint your own textures in. Speaking of this painting, I gotta show you how to actually use the building gadget template manager, which is what's going to allow you to copy things from one world and send it to another, or for example, take shared projects just like I'm doing here and share that with your friends or use them yourself. And this beautiful little thing right here is actually what handles all of this. So if I place this template manager down, the GUI, if we, by the way, hit Control O, we can see all of the GUI here. And you notice it says save, load, copy, paste, render, so on and so forth, has a template name. Now, what's important is that you make a selection of an area. For example, I want to go ahead and go to copy. Let's also unanchor. I'm also going to clear all of this. And I want to go into the copy mode of the copy paste tool. And I want to find the center point of this slice, which is where I want to copy from, right? This is the center point. I'm going to right click right here. And then I'm actually going to put a stopping point all the way up at the very top of this. And then I'm going to shift right click to set that position. Or I guess technically I could go ahead and use the expand feature of this to actually expand this out to be big enough. And so after tinkering with that a little bit, I now have this entire area copied and selected. So with that copied and selected, I can take my building gadget over here and I should be able to load this onto a piece of paper, for example. So if I grab some paper, I can share this with my friends. This is like a very important thing. So we can name this and we can hit save. So this is going to be castle side corner, just like that. And then I hit save. And that is going to save this, as you can see right here, and show you a previewed render of it, just like this, that you can use in your own world. Now, there's going to be a couple of little stragglers here, but it doesn't really matter. This is the important part. Now, what we can also do is we can click copy, and this allows me to copy the code. And this is going to be important because over on the Discord, you're going to want to copy that code that is going to be in a paste bin or a git paste. And what you're going to do is after you copy it from the Discord, you are then going to put a piece of paper in here and you're going to hit paste. And what that's going to do is it's going to paste that code onto the template. And then you can load the template into your copy paste gadget. And so what exactly does this allow you to do? Well, this allows you to not only copy things that I share with you, but you can actually build your structure in creative mode, right? And then you can actually paste it in the world here. Pretty darn cool if you have the allotted materials that you use to build, of course. So now that that's out of the way, let's talk about actually building. And something cool that I can do is I can enchant an exchanging gadget. And by the way, we're guaranteed to basically always, with this enchanting, to always get Silk Touch, right? Out of the main one here. And what you could actually do outside of getting the Silk Touch here is you could use the exchanging gadget to guarantee you always getting Silk Touch, because you could Silk Touch this. So if you want any of your other tools to have it, you would just drop an anvil and a book on it with Obsidian underneath using Super Factory Manager, and you can see that it will grant you Silk Touch, and you can just keep repeating this because this is some tool that actually has a guaranteed Silk Touch. So pretty darn cool. And I want Silk Touch on here so I can get my stone back whenever we are actually exchanging blocks. And speaking of exchanging blocks, let's go back all the way back to the castle. And I want to show you my method, or at least how I like to manage builds like this. So I've built out my template and I want to start decorating this. And this is a very time consuming process. And I will say that it may be kind of, I don't know, better to build it by hand out of all the materials, but I like to paint. And I use the exchanging gadget as a painting tool. So if I get my chipped tool, I think I have it in my bag. Right. I want to go in here and I want to craft a bunch of this massive stone bricks. This is a really, really nice material. And I can go ahead and place it down like this, and I'll shift right click to select it. Now, inside of this, I just have a single block set, and I don't have to really worry about any of the other settings. All I have to do is just start placing these blocks in like this, and just kind of painting in by doing like something like this, like a little bit of a wave, and kind of randomize things and just really paint it into my world. And you'll see that this gives it a lot of depth. I think this is a really, really neat method for getting good looking builds, because you can just imagine it and you can just paint it, right? So if you want like big, long cracks to stream up the wall, you can do that by just simply painting. And if you have an auto clicker, by the way, you can click a little bit faster by holding that button down. So if you have like a macro to right click really fast, this makes the painting process a lot easier. Otherwise, it is a pretty slow click that happens here, and it's going to miss a few blocks. But if you have that button clicking, it is a whole lot easier to paint in. And I don't know, it feels really good to do this. And so just with this little bit of exchanging, you can see all of these blocks now placed in, and it's already given this place a actual castle vibe. Now, I know a lot of you guys really want to see me like progress through the mods, and I really do find it hard to find a balance between taking the time to build and also continue to progress. So this is going to be an ever evolving sort of base where this is the foundation, but as I continue to play, you're going to notice some subtle changes that might be taking place, as whenever I do find time, I'm going to be going in here and I'm just going to be exchanging some blocks from time to time. And we are still going to be progressing. So today we actually are going to be starting a new mod. And I know you guys have been anticipating this. Mekanism. Yes, we're going to dive a little bit into Mekanism, just so that way we can get the utilities of mechanisms within our reach. And yes, I am still on my Sky Island for this, because this is where the temporary is going to reside that will eventually get moved into that base, because the upper part of the new castle base, I want to be magic related, and I want the underground part to be tech related. And I still haven't gotten to the point of building and clearing out the underground. And that's primarily because we just don't have enough power. So we can generate a ton of power today, and I think we can also gain access to some wireless power transfer, which, because there's no flux networks in here, will probably be done with the power mod. Now, to really dive into Mekanism, we need to smelt up some osmium. This is the primary thing that you need to find to get started with the mod. And the quest does recommend, if you are just jumping into it without any other kind of generator, to make a heat generator, which I will admit is a pretty good way to do this. And you just have to surround this with buckets of lava. Even you can basically place a lava directly in the position where it resides, and that will also generate a little bit of power, which allows you to kind of jumpstart into getting your metallurgic infusers powered. I mean, because honestly, metallurgic infusers are the initial start of this mod. So I'm going to get these placed in just like so, and we now have some nice power going to them. But steel is technically the progression that you would want to move towards in Mekanism early on. But in this pack, we can actually make steel with our iron hammer and some coal. So just by grabbing some coal here, I can fill this up and place in some iron and also the hammer. And I think it has to go in a very specific order, some interesting order. Let's see, where is it at? I think it requires, no, we actually need iron dust, sorry. So yes, it is iron dust, which you get, by the way, from the hammer. So let's go ahead and make a few of those. Just like that. I think 3 stacks seems like a really good amount. And then we take the coal like this and bam, then we can make steel dust, right? So it does require though that hammer, and that hammer just requires 2 blocks of iron. But man, what an easy recipe for getting into steel, which typically takes a little bit of time to build up just to be able to make the Mekanism cables. So this is a very, very nice quality of life. Now, not a lot has changed with Mekanism, but a couple of things have. For example, now to make the alloy for the mod, you no longer use iron, but instead use copper. That's pretty cool. But still the same recipes. You're gonna need 2 stacks, essentially, of redstone. And be careful, don't do what I just did, where if you do put it in that slot, by the way, it will get consumed. Also, we have tons of redstone in our farm, so yeah, I'm not running out. But yeah, we'll put this in here, and it takes 2 redstone for 1 single osmium to get started with this mod. And yeah, the machines make a lot of noise. Keep in mind though, you can actually muffle those noises by doing this, or there is a muffler upgrade that does cost some steel dust. It's a little bit cheaper now because each machine, I believe, only requires like 1 muffler upgrade now to reduce the noise. But something else to note in this version, Mekanism machines used to only receive up to 8 upgrades. Yeah, well, now it's 32 upgrades. 32 upgrades. That's a lot of upgrades. Now, as soon as you have a little bit of these circuits, it's probably recommended to make the basic tier installers and get yourself your machines upgraded to the next tier. And you can shift right click on these bad boys, and this now has 3 slots. And so now you can do 3 times the amount, basically multiplying your machines by 3. Now, as for the alloys over here, its primary focus early on is going to be used for making upgrades. Now, technically, you would want to have another infuser that's just making steel, but like I showed you, steel is very easy to make in this pack. So I'm kind of going to disregard making it in this way and just kind of use the method here as it's so much faster. Now, once we have some sort of auto crafting, this will probably be better to just move to this mod or some other mod to make steel. But by hand, since that's what we're doing right now with no auto crafting, that's the way. Now, a couple of upgrades that we're going to want right off the bat is going to be energy upgrades, which require gold, and we're also going to need osmium. Now, these upgrades also cost steel now with structural glass. So yes, it costs 4 steel. So basically for each of these upgrades, it's going to cost you 2 steel. And just to get started, I recommend making 8, just like the old school way. Just make 8 of them each for each of your machines getting started, because the power draw starts to get kind of crazy if you add more than that. And so if you did everything correctly, there we go. We now have energy and speed, which you do want to use them in combination together. They do complement each other. And we get both of these upgraded, and now things are really going to start cooking, because this makes the speed so much quicker and will allow me to process even more, right? Because that's what we need. We need more and more and more of those alloys, so that way we can get our machines upgraded and faster, kind of moving along that progression. Okay, so enough of me rambling, right? Why are we even getting into Mekanism in the first place? Well, I'm going to say primarily for power. Well, and cables, of course. Now, something I want to mention, this is not me moving towards a gas burning generator. Even though I do have one in my inventory that I got via the quest, the gas burning generator, while it can generate a little bit of power, I'm not quite sure how much power it can generate. So yeah, after popping into a creative test world, that amount of power looks to be about 2.3 thousand RF per tick. Well, and it's actually not that bad that it can generate that much power. But yeah, the ingredients required to craft this multi-block and kind of the steps required, that can get a little bit expensive. And to put that in perspective of how much it has been nerfed, yeah, it actually would generate about 72,000 if unconfigured. Now, testing a few other options, it does seem like at about Y level 200, this is wind generators going to produce like 200 FE per tick. And right here, setting at Y level 65, we're generating almost 100, which is really, really good. Seems like these have definitely been buffed. And the solar panel, the higher tier solar panel is producing almost 500 FE per tick. This is really good. This typically does about 240. So yeah, the solar and wind have been upgraded, while for some reason the gas burning has been nerfed. But of course, this is not where the big power is actually made within Mekanism. No. That comes a little bit later in the form of reactors. So now back at the base, you may be wondering, Chosen, don't you already have like good means of power? And I do. But it's not super cheap to kind of replicate over and over again. Even with a quarry, we don't have an infinite supply of netherite, right? So that is something that I want to keep in mind. And I do want to dabble in a new mod in the future. That new mod is, of course, going to be Applied Energistics, and it's going to cost a bit of power to get started. But my sort of goal is, once I get Applied Energistics up and running, we can start mystical agriculture. And if we can start mystical agriculture, then our life becomes tremendously easier from that point forward. And we really start to worry less about going mining and worrying about our quarry, and we worry more about getting to play with these fun mods. By the way, already with just setting this up alone, 160 and then another 160, we're already generating more power than this emerald generator right here. Oh, and by the way, look at the generation factor inside of this dimension where we're at 253. Yeah, 254 RF from a thing that just generates power for free. And to literally make what the gas burning generator generates, you would basically need like 8 of these, give or take. So now, what are some other reasons for getting into Mekanism? Well, the enrichment chamber. Now, the enrichment chamber for other mods is used quite a bit. And if we dive into the recipes of the enrichment chamber, you can see that we can kind of get dyes, there's some stuff like that, but there's also some integration built into the enrichment chamber for applied energistics, and this will be tremendously helpful to us later on down the road. But another really helpful thing that it's going to allow me to do is get a little bit more ancient debris, or a little bit more use out of our ancient debris, allowing us to triple the output from our ancient debris. Now, already we were able to double it, and you can also do this with the enrichment chamber as well, but we can take it a step further and crush it first, then send it into an enrichment chamber, and that will produce 3. And I will get these machines upgraded, but in the configuration panel, there were some new things that was added recently. Of course, you can move this around, but now you can actually pin this window. So when you go into another machine, the configuration window will always stay available. I think that was a really, really cool change that was recently added. But yeah, some things to note if you're unfamiliar with this mod. It doesn't have an auto input feature, but it does have an auto eject feature. So we can clear the config here, and we can make sure the top is set to an input and the bottom is set to an output. And if we have auto eject on, it will actually take the item that is in this blue section here, and it will automatically inject it if the input is set. For example, this is an input, just like that. And then if we had a chest, for example, to the right side, we can have that auto input on, and it would automatically eject over here. Just the input doesn't accept, but if a machine can auto output, it can accept it. And this is like a fundamental part of how this mod works. Now, I do want to show this off, so I'm just going to put one of the ancient debris in here. It's going to take a little bit of time for this to process, but it's going to be super duper worth, right? So it's going to turn this into netherite, dirty netherite scrap, and then the dirty netherite scrap is then going to get converted. And notice there's 3 of them, and this is going to convert it directly into that 3 times processing. So a little bit nicer and getting a little bit more out of it. And considering a lot of our other power scale things are going to require netherite, yeah, you're going to want to make sure you get the most bang for the buck. So now we have a little bit of Mekanism infrastructure set up. We have the ability to now generate some passive power on demand just by either making these windmills or solar generators. So what's next? Well, something that's going to make life a little bit easier on me and allow me to build more freely and also use the building gadget mod a bit more is going to be some way to charge the items in my inventory faster. And honestly, one of the best ways to do that and also carry this into other dimensions is going to be using power. I know, much like me, you're probably like, oh, power again? And to that, I'm going to say yes. As of right now, it's the only real option. Otherwise, I probably would have played around with Flux Networks again during this playthrough. But I can't stress enough the actual power of the power mod. It is beyond a powerful tool, not only to generate power, but to manipulate and move power around. And if you have lava buckets, it's honestly really easy to get started. You don't even need to go to the nether for this. And one of the nice parts about using the Ars terminal is it will go ahead and replace the bucket of lava and take the bucket and put it back. It handles this beautifully. There's not a lot of storage mods that actually will do that. Now, out of all the stuff in the power mod, what I can recommend the most right off the bat is going to be some way to charge yourself. So you actually don't need a whole lot for this to work. Really, if you want to charge within your main dimension, you just need a zombie. So we need an aerial pearl, and we just need to capture a zombie from within it. But as of right now, it is daytime, and I would actually prefer it to be night so I can find a zombie easier. Oh yeah, there is a mod that does that. All you need for this to work is a 4-block gap, and you can place yourself a rope and nail, just like this from the Comforts mod, and it will give you a hammock, and you can sleep in your hammock, and it will skip it to just right before nightfall. Oh, that is so good. And so just like my wife, you can nap your woes away. Ah, how amazing. Aha, and right over here is the zombie that I need. There we go. So I now have it captured in the aerial pearl. Now, I really don't recommend sticking with the starter because you can just go up to the basic very, very quickly. And the basic is going to allow 4,000 FE per tick transfer rate, which is more than I'm actually generating overall. And this is probably going to be a really good point, just basic. We don't even have to do anything else with the mod. It's just some simple crafts. And there we go. Now, we do need a binding card, but this is also another thing that is very simple for us to make. And we do have to bind this, by the way, to ourselves. But if we happen to find ourselves an Enderman, we can click this on the Enderman, and we have to also click it on ourselves, right, to bind it to ourselves. But if we find ourselves an Enderman nearby, we can make this work cross-dimensionally. So just right down here, it happens to be some Enderman, and voila, now we can have power cross-dimensionally. It's that easy. I'm not kidding. This is how easy this process is. And, well, we just need to provide power to this thing now. And I think a good place for this power generation is probably going to be just plopped down right here with the rest of everything else. Notice this receives some power. It also has a power buffer. So yeah, expect your power grid to potentially go down if you do not have enough to support it. But there we go. So it has 4 million power stored. And whenever I'm not using it, it's just going to recharge. And we put our card in here. And once it's inside, we now have player charging, and you can now see that my inventory is now being charged up and my battery is getting charged. So yeah, in reality, we don't even need that battery anymore. But you know what? There's actually a use for that battery we have. And that battery can be used inside of the Ender Cell. And the Ender Cell is a way of doing cross-dimensional and interdimensional power transfer. So yes, if you're familiar with the Flux networks and how a plug and a point works, then you're going to be very familiar with this, because an Ender Cell essentially acts as the plug, though the thing that receives power from all of your other mods, and then the gates in the mod act as a point, which is pretty darn cool. Now these things start to get a little bit expensive, and we're going to notice this requires obsidian to make, and also is going to require ender cores. Now this requires the energizing orb process. It's actually not too difficult. We just have to place these individual items in and use a little bit of a power to generate this item. But of course this requires blaze rods as well. Now the obsidian problem I think we can solve today, because I'm almost positive this upgrade right here, obsidian generator upgrade, was recently added and cost 4 of these dripping upgrades and 1 water upgrade. And we can have a thing that generates obsidian for us. And this has to be new because I don't remember seeing this before. So now we have access to an obsidian generator upgrade, which I assume can go just inside of a barrel here, like this. And is it just going to passively generate obsidian? That I'm actually unsure of. Oh my goodness. I bet this is much faster if you add more of them in there. It's gotta be. Yep, because now every operation it generates 3 obsidian. So I guess at this point, I just make myself an energizing orb, and I think we get gifted some things in the quest. Oh, it looks like we get one of those. It wants us to make energy cables and also energizing rods. Also, by the way, ignore all of these exclamation points over here. I have been accepting the item quests, but not the XP from them, because I want to save some of that XP, even though I really shouldn't, just in case I die. There is a way to store XP that we'll dive into a little bit later. But yeah, I'm kind of saving it till that point. So now after making these things, we have, hopefully we'll get something nice. And we got another starter, but there was a chance for us to get something nice. The percent chance though, not so high. So there we go. Now I can place down like an energizing orb right here, and I can just simply place this, for example, right here. And that will give me a little bit of charge getting started. I do recommend though, upgrading to at least basic, which doesn't take too much to do. This is a starter, and yeah, we just need a little bit more iron to make a basic. Now to get to this point, you do need quartz, so yeah, that does mean either you find it in a structure in the overworld, or you need to go to the nether to kind of gain access to at least this charging portion. So now let's go ahead and get these basic items in here and kind of get jump started with this mod. It's pretty straightforward. You just right click the items in that you want. This is then going to charge. You're going to see lasers and a percentage, and then when it's done, we are then able to right click and pull it out. Also, same for the upgrade materials to get into this mod. It doesn't take too much to do this, just requires a gold and an iron, and we get ourselves energized steel, all allowing us to sort of progress. And then the next tier is going to take a bit more power. It's going to require higher tier energizing rods and so on and so forth. So what I really need all of this for, though, is to be able to make an ender cell that's at least at the hardened tier, giving me that 10,000 input transfer rate in and out, like overall on our network. And that's upgraded later on by going higher tier all the way up to 2 million transfer per ender cell. I do want to mention there is another mod you can actually use for wireless power transfer, and it's pretty darn cool. Aside from using the quantum entangle porter from Mekanism, you can actually use RF tools. And RF tools, to kind of take a side note, there does have the dimensional cell in here, which is a pretty good way of sending power. You do have to use power cards for this, and basically you copy the ID using the power card inside the GUI for the dimensional cell, and you can go ahead and put another dimensional cell down and place that linked power card in there, thus sharing the power. However, there is a range power loss, so the further away something is, the less power. You're going to have some power loss in that journey until you get up into the higher tiers. For example, the dimensional cell advanced, which is a little bit better at that. And just like I did with a builder, you can always infuse it, and it makes that power cost a little bit less. And I mean, honestly, that's just as simple as crafting 2 items, whereas this does have a little bit more in depth. But man, there's just so much more utility in this mod. Now, crafting the ender cell is going to use some of that obsidian that we just made, and also one of those ender cores, and there we go. So remember how I said that battery, right, is going to be important. So let me place this down on our network right here, and by default, it has nothing inside of it, and it's not going to accept any power. That's because it doesn't have a buffer. The way we give it a buffer is by using a battery or a energy cell. Don't get those two confused. They're two different things. And if I shift right click this into it, we now get that buffer that had all of that charge in it, and that's why it went up. And we now have a 4 million power buffer, and this can now charge it up. But we can also use this power wirelessly, and that's where those gates come into play. For example, we can make these starter gates that generate 5,000 RF per tick. And whenever we create these, or sorry, 500 RF per tick, whenever we create these, we can now use them in our machines. A Mekanism energy cube. Now, this is going to charge in my inventory, so there's a little bit of charge in here. But notice now I can place this gate on here, and we're going to see that it is now increasing. And it looks like it's receiving a max input of 500 FE per tick, which is what the limit is on this. And when I open up the GUI on the gate, which has some configuration in here in Redstone control, we'll notice that it is accessing that first channel, and it looks just the same as this. However, this does have separate channels here. So just make sure that you have the proper channel selected, and the higher tier you go up, the more channels you gain access to. So voila, we have now unlocked the ability to have and power things wirelessly and cross-dimensionally. And these are 100% things that I'm going to be using in the future. Oh man, especially these gates. They're some of my favorite things to use. I do like using pipes, but there are just some cases where it looks so much cleaner just to have a centralized power area and basically power all of these by placing a gate on them. Oh, and with that, I almost forgot, I do need to make a precision sawmill, and the reason behind the precision sawmill is so we can make sawdust. So a log, for example, should be able to produce that that dust, right? So I put this in here. It's got a horrible noise it makes, but it is going to produce sawdust, right? And sawdust can be used in this pack to facade mechanism cables. Yes, cables can be facaded in here. A quick note, it does look like using, for example, pressurized plates or pressure plates gives you a higher chance of potentially getting sawdust. I could be wrong there, but it definitely seemed like that was the case. Yeah, there's a little bit of a lossless sort of situation here, but it does give you 2 every operation. And this can be used for the Mekanism covers mod. And if you can't tell, I am super excited by this because it gives sawdust another use besides a cardboard box, right? Which of course is a very useful thing for picking up entity related blocks, tile entities. But I'm really excited for this, right? So I want to experiment with this. Is it like something that you like shift right click? Oh wait, so you probably place the pipes down, right? So you're carrying your pipe and then you shift right click this on here. Oh man, I'm actually kind of confused by how this works, right? I don't actually know. Okay, interesting. I just looked at the config for it basically, and you combine it with a block, and then whenever you have it combined, you can then right click it on here, And it says to remove it, you just break the block. And that will be one way to remove it, but you can also remove it with the configurator, apparently. So you can also see through it with the configurator as well. Okay, that's interesting. Can you break it with a configurator in your hand? Oh, wow. I wonder if there's a way to get it off. Okay, so you essentially need your wrench to be in wrench mode, and you can shift scroll wheel. There's also a GUI for that as well. So place this down, click that on there, and then in wrench mode, you can get rid of it like this. Okay. And it looks like it does pop both the cable and the facade off. Because right-clicking, yeah, shift right-clicking pops both. Interesting. But you know what? It's really hard to complain about something that is cool, like facades like this. That, man, I don't know. Just something about being able to cover cables from time to time, just whenever you have something intersecting, it just looks ugly. But with this, you can just make it look like whatever you want. It does look like, however, it does consume the item, but also gives you back the item. Wait, that's very interesting. So it consumes the item, but it gives you back, it leaves the item inside the crafting table. Pretty neat. Now, why exactly did I spend all of this time working on these few mods right here? Well, all of this has led up to being able to go back to the castle, that's right, and start the process of clearing exactly underneath the center here, clearing out a pretty large area. And how am I going to get this area cleared out, you might be wondering? Well, none other than the destruction gadget, because I really don't care about the stone that I'm going to be generating down here, but what I do care about is getting this done efficiently and fast. So getting a nice area down underneath the center point here is going to be done best with the destruction gadget. And this thing needs some power and wireless power to do it. I don't want to be going back and forth and charging it all the time. So how do we play around with this mod? So let me go ahead and show you a pretty nifty trick. All right, let me get out of the hole. So by default, the point you're looking at with this mod is not exactly shown, right? So we're seeing that there is no block located right here. So it is a 1x1 that it has selected. And yeah, we can't really see that point, right? And that's because default is pretty safe, right? Whenever you craft this, because the depth is set to 0. Whenever we set the depth to 1, it can now select a block. And yes, this will void that block. So be careful on what you click on, because whatever you click on gets deleted, like permanently, right? It's not like exchanging or anything. So what we can do now is we can see the center point here, and we can start to increase our size from our left and our right and our up and our down. And by doing this, we've created a 3x3 destruction tool. So this will destroy a 3x3 when clicked. But what we can also do is we can increase the depth. So right now the depth is only 1 block, but now it's 2 blocks. And you can see with that 2 wide gap that this is now extended. And so this kind of helps to understand how this tool actually works and from the point where you click it. So yes, if you start to expand up here, you're going to see that, well, now this is still going up, but it went up 3 blocks, right? Or 2 more blocks up, but this point from which we're clicking is still that center point, right? It's all from the center perspective. And so now if I set my depth to 3 with everything else set to 1, we get a 3x3x3. And while looking down, I can clear that area out, and it allows me to dig a hole that is a 3x3 perfectly down. But don't let me fool you though, this can go much, much bigger than that. So yes, this can go up to a 16x16x16 and can take out a very, very large area. So now I have dug a hole all the way down to Y level 0, and this is going to allow me to know how high I can go up to clear out a pretty large area, right? And there are going to be caves nearby and stuff that I'm going to have to clear up. But what I want is I want another large space down here that I can decorate that is going to be related to technology. And I want to have a portal that is going to be up top that teleports me down here or something like that. That way I can keep magic up top and tech down underground. And so I've technically gone 23 blocks up, and I have all of these set to 11, 11, 11, which all equates to a 23x23 within the center point. And now when I right click, this is going to consume out an area that is 23 blocks. Yes. And that's pretty big, right? It's a pretty big area. It is going to, we're going to have some water issues. It looks like we're going to have to fix. But yeah, for the most part, this is a pretty big room. And so I just need to continue scaling this all the way down until we have a massive 23 by 23 by 23 size space that we can decorate. That, my friends, right there is a no hassle way of getting yourself a base up and running and getting yourself some power with some wireless power transmission, just preparing ourselves for the future, which is going to be diving into applied energistics. So I hope you guys are excited for that episode. It's really going to be a huge expansion. As soon as we dive into that mod, it's going to explode this mod pack wide open, and I am looking forward to that with you guys. So if you're looking forward to that yourself, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up. And with that being said, it's now time to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going out to none other than Unpredictable43. Thank you so much for your amazing support, by the way, in choosing to support this content in one of the best ways possible. And that is by supporting me over on the Discord. So definitely check out the Discord, definitely get access to that code that allows you to paste that stone structure part of the castle into your world. And also check out the server shop. That's how you can do this. And I really do appreciate you guys very, very much. All of you who have clicked that subscribe button here on YouTube, and those who actually support the channel financially. I can't do this without you guys. It's honestly, thank you. And I can't say it enough. So with that being said, I do want to thank you as well again for watching. And as always, yet again, thanks for watching.